All right, so I'm starting to think that recording all of these in one day was probably not the wisest decision. With that said, we are doing a studio refresh and we're still figuring out this whole thing, so there is that. There is definitely an interesting story about this box, which represents the MacBook Pro 16 inch. Having said that, I totally forgot to hit record when I actually did the unboxing. And it's kind of a shame because I think I actually did a pretty good job considering that's not normally how I roll. With that said, there's also a really interesting story because even when I got home, the box was already open. So at least I think it's interesting from a customer experience perspective. So with that said, all right, everybody. So this is Josh Bruce, and today we're going to be talking about the MacBook Pro 16 inch and the customer service that kind of went around it. So basically, I feel like I can just kind of breeze over like who the Apple is, but I want to keep this consistent, right? So I've been using Apple products since about 2005 or 6. Before that, my household did have the original Macintosh, but we moved away from Apple products and started using PCs. And then I bought my first Mac Mini in 2005. One of the things that impresses me about Apple is their constant attention to the customer experience, positive and negative, as much as that sucks. But over the years, it's just sort of evolved, and they've become sort of a name for in this space of what does it look like to have a full customer experience. Now, when I went to the website, you know what? Let's pull up the website. All right, so we're on Apple's website, and as you can see, it's just this stark contrast of itself, right? There's images everywhere, bright, colorful, but not totally in your face about it. So come over here, I'm looking for a Mac because they have still maintained um, a small category of devices. It's usually pretty easy to navigate and figure out where you're going. So I'm looking for a computer, which all of their computers are Macs. I'm looking for the MacBook Pro 16 inch. Here you go. Again, going back to the remarkable video and the look that we did on their website, it's very similar, right? So Apple does these interesting things with scrolling animations and all sorts of stuff. But you have this high contrast buy button up here, right? So let's go ahead and click on that. And now we're here. So we have the 16 inch. We do get a message. It becomes conspicuous because it uses the teal. So it's going to draw your attention, and then it sticks around. But instead of being conspicuous, it's a little bit more subdued. We're going to choose the 16 inch MacBook Pro. And when we scroll down, so basically we're given, Apple is very good about minimizing options to make the path the user takes a little bit easier to walk, right? Um, so we are going to choose the 16 inch. We're coming down here. What sort of processor do you want? Chances are I'm going to go over here. It's going to be a space gray. I'm going to look at the rest of the specs. That price tag looks pretty decent, at least to me. I'm going to select it. This takes us to the next part of the journey. You could just add the baseline to your bag, and so that's a sticky footer, or you can customize it. Now we customized this one. We left the processor the same, upgraded the RAM to 32, upgraded the graphics to the highest that you can go, which is the 8 gigabyte GPU, upgraded the storage, the hard drive, to being 1 terabyte. Now at this point, I could be done, right? I could have hit add to bag at any step of the way. If I only wanted to change one thing, that's all I would have changed. But you get the keyboard language, you get the ability to add a couple of pro software packages as well, and then you get told what's in the box. I am a little bit disheartened that you don't get the 3-meter extender, but we can talk about that later. Then you basically add this to your bag, takes you to the next page, asks you, do you want to get the Apple Care? I usually do get Apple Care Plus, just throwing that out there. I find it to be very helpful. a lightning cable, and a USB adapter. If you add AppleCare to your bag, it basically keeps your bag and you don't get a page refresh or anything. Did we actually add it? Yeah. Okay. And so basically you can keep scrolling, just for different add-ons and things like that, or you can review the bag. So this is sort of the next step in the process. And then basically the button's right here, so you can do checkout. But if this price looks a little bit crazy pants, you can basically look to figure out why. Oh, they're estimating the tax at this and da-da-da, right? So then I can check out. I can use Apple Pay to check out. I can use a credit card. I think you have a couple of other options. And basically you put in your order that you want to order it. Now, I actually did not purchase this as a personal machine. I purchased it through Eightfold itself, and so I actually contacted the Apple business folks and placed the order with them, basically through the store. And there's a 7 to 10 day wait because I customized it, and basically they sent me this box 7 to 10 days later. So I'm really kind of amped about some of the stuff I want to show in here, even though I've already recorded it like 3 times. Just the fact that it exists from a customer experience perspective is awesome to me. So let's go ahead and shift to top down and actually look at this thing. It might be hard to believe, but I'm actually mostly impressed with the outside box. So I live in the Pacific Northwest, and the Pacific Northwest has a reputation for having a lot of rain. With that said, I would say this is the first time that I actually experienced a heavy rain for like 2 days straight. Normally it's this weird drizzle that happens. So with that said, I left the office, got to my place, and on the door was the FedEx sticker basically saying, "Sorry, we missed you." And I got home about 1 o'clock, and it was 12:46, and I was just like, man, I've already been walking in the rain with my poncho, and when we do the bag video, you'll hear about that. But basically, but I just missed them, and do I have to really wait around until 7 o'clock at night like the app says? And anyway, at one point it ended up being updated that it was actually a facility that was about quarter of a mile away, and I was like, all right, fine. So anyway, that's the short version. And I went to the FedEx building, and basically they gave me this box, right? So I had my bag, and it was all empty, and basically I could not fit this box into that bag. Now, I already know that I can fit the laptop in my bag, but this box itself, I could not. And so Apple went ahead, and I asked the person behind the counter if I could go ahead and open the box, and she grabbed a box cutter for me and put it on the counter. But Apple went ahead and sprung for the box that has the pull strip. So all I needed to do was pull off this piece of cardboard that was laminated. And so, yeah, no knife necessary. So no extra tools, no extra devices. Then I opened it and got even more excited. Not because it said MacBook Pro on it. I was expecting that. And just for the record, I don't get excited about things until they actually happen. So it's kind of a bummer when somebody, asks you to a birthday party or something like that. Like, hey, you want to come to my birthday party? And you're like, sure, that'd be great. And then they don't invite you because they don't think you're excited about it. And it's like, yeah, I'm not excited till I actually get there. Sorry. So anyhow, I noticed these 2 little cardboard tabs, and I also noticed that they're creating this gap between the box, so I can literally get my hand around it. I can get my fingers in here relatively comfortably. So that was impressive. But what's really impressive, like, watch the logo as I turn the cardboard. It actually lifts the box out, right? So basically, sorry about the sound there. Basically, we go from being recessed about an inch or 2 to basically being lifted almost flush with the outside box. That to me is just wicked cool. So let's go ahead and, I'm trying not to make a lot of noise. I'm sure I'm failing horribly. So again, just, there we go. It's up, it's doing its thing, and I can easily get my hand on it, and then it just slides right out. I'm not even fighting the outside box. So let's take a look at this thing. So basically, you know, it's just a piece of cardboard. You know, it started life as a flat piece of cardboard that got laminated. That's why it's all shiny. Got laminated on one side, and then I'm sure they cut it out, right? Like after they laminated it. And so, you know, in case you're not aware, right, like somebody actually had to create a die, like a cookie cutter that would punch this thing out. And then somebody, I doubt they folded it by hand, somebody had to create a machine or something that would basically, let's see, I would say it probably pushes down, like there's two flat panels that push down on these parts to create that fold. And then there's probably a mechanism like bars or risers or something that caused this to happen, right? So like, it's just insane that somebody goes through that much trouble. But basically, like, if you look at it, right, I'm trying to get the whole thing here. So if you look at it, basically, as I raise this up, this bottom flap, this bottom part, let's try to make it a little bit more obvious here. That bottom piece just raises and lowers ever so much. And it's just enough to get you out of the box, right? And you could even go further with it, right? But little things, but they're expensive, you know? That's why people don't do them. And it makes sense. But when your company, you know, has basically the income of a small country, you know, you can do weird things. So here we go. Most of the laptop covers, or most of the laptop boxes are usually closed. The laptop is shown closed because initially we were doing a lot with the thinness of the device and emphasizing that. I think the first one I ever bought was actually the first Unibody, and it was closed, and you could see the whole top with the Apple logo on it. And basically it comes in just tightly sealed, like perfectly sealed in this shrink wrap. And but again, I don't need a special tool. I'm given this piece of vellum that I can sort of pull, and as I pull, it tears the shrink wrap, and I can easily get to the rest of the box. Now, this attention to customer experience is both a blessing and a curse for everybody involved. It's a blessing for the customers because it's really easy to open. It's a curse for the customers because we begin to expect, or we have a tendency to begin to expect that same thing across the board. And so it's important that I would say that it's more important to be relatively consistent across the board than to have a really good experience in one part, like one product or one piece of the whole experience. You know, like I went to a restaurant one day and I had the greatest apple cobbler I ever had. Everything else on the menu was crap, right? That sort of a thing. That's not a true story, by the way. One of the other things that I find fascinating about this one is that this print is not actually adhered to the box. So it's actually, you know, I don't know if you can see it kind of curving a little bit here and there. That's just the paper riding on a pocket of air, basically. Now, we talked about with the Remarkable the idea of anticipation building and letting your customers sort of go, let me get to the device, let me get to the device. And that's what Apple does really, really well, right? So we mentioned that basically in that same video we mentioned about the lid and the bottom of the box sort of being really close to, you know, not being able to move or breathe, which becomes problematic because the vacuum could actually become such that you can't even open the box. And that I think I actually had that problem with with my first MacBook Pro. But anyhow, so basically, they've made it strong enough that I can hold it on both sides, and I'm not actually affecting the distance between the base and the lid. So I get this sort of, oops, I put it back in upside down, my bad. But I get sort of this pop, this seal, this like feeling, and then I can remove the lid and see the laptop. And as I mentioned, I put it back in upside down, so normally this is actually turned around. So it is that paying attention to detail, but the tab is also closest to me, right? So I can easily lift it out. And again, that's what we were talking about with the Remarkable, is being able to have sort of this tab here that we could lift and make it just that one more sort of final thing. And this too has that sort of vacuum seal, because we're engineers, and that's what we do. We make things we engineer things to roughly the same size. Like I remember when Johnny Ive was talking about, I think it was the iPhone 5S, like that basically the different pieces of the device are such that they're just a few microns off, right? So anyway, so then you pull the tab farther, the glue comes unhinged. You can pull the corners off and just be left there with the device to pull out. I appreciate sliding it out like a sleeve on most occasions. And so there it is, right? That's our 16-inch MacBook Pro. All right, so let's start with where the power cord is. So, or the USB-C cord is, which is really the same thing. So of course it's round, it's bright white and matte finish. But this thing is really fascinating to me, at least it was, mainly because of this pin. So this pin goes into this slot that's right here. And basically it makes it so that, one, it doesn't move, right? So it doesn't roll around. It also is what keeps it flush, just like the packet of books here. Because if I accidentally am packing this box and I put this the other way, right, like it doesn't sit. It's not actually seated in there. I can hit it and take it off, but if I get it to match up with that little slot, right, which is, again, just one of those little tiny details that certain folks end up getting involved with. But then I can use these to pull it out. When the cable's there, it's holding it shut, and basically there's a pin, right? A pin and slot that basically allows this to lock so that it's still one unit when you first pull it out, and very easy to take apart. And it's still stamped out, again, special die, stamped out, and this is this little tab or this little flap is then folded over to and glued to create that tab that goes into that slot. So also very cool. And the fact that it's just made out of like a heavyweight cardstock is awesome. Books, and you also get, really? Are you fighting me? I think it is. There we go. Space gray stickers. Everybody that I saw talking about the MacBook Pro 16-inch was like, we finally got space gray stickers. And but again, it is one of those small little details, right? Why do the stickers not match the color of the device? Given that a lot of the stickers in the past have, except for like the Macintosh, the original Macintosh, they were rainbow, right? So then we have another little pull tab. This material is actually different than all the other vellum-like material we've hit so far, and I also ended up tearing it because I was so fascinated by it. And so, but it's the same concept. You've got the pull tab, it's one sheet, it's just kind of glued together to protect this from getting scratched up. Now, before we talk about me being possibly unfair to the Remarkable and the fact that I thought it was over-branded in its packaging, Apple has logos on almost everything here it should just be an imprint. No, they even took that off. They took the imprint off, which is wicked cool. This seems a little brighter than usual. Let's go ahead and there, that feels better. Okay, so now we have the brick, as it were. And I have to say, this is one of the things when I got my first MacBook Pro, one of the things that I was really impressed by. And it specifically is that. So this little connector, right? So because the brick is basically there to make sure that you're getting enough voltage and wattage and whatnots. But this is what makes this brick a universal brick. And if I need to buy an adapter to go to, Hong Kong, Europe, whatever, I can just buy this piece that then gets plugged into this brick. And that's also the way that the extensions work, right? So the extenders work the same way. You just take this off. In my original MacBook Pro, I could actually, because I was taking it off constantly, to get the extension on, I could literally remove it with one hand. And then also the idea that the prongs are folded so that you can, stick them out, because, these can get bent, broken, what have you. And now, it's spring loaded, in case you didn't notice, but it's spring loaded, and like, I can just fold them out of the way. It's, to me, that was a pretty awesome little thing. Nothing else to this box. Can't really take it out. There's not a lot of movement that can happen. And one of the other things is that, again, well, not again, but it's applicable to the Remarkable as well. It's not like we can actually make the box any thinner, right? Because the power cable pretty much, or the power brick, takes up this much space. This much depth. The envelope with the documents takes up this much depth, and that laptop was flush to this outer edge. So it does feel like wasted space here and here on the sides, but there's not much we can do about it given what comes in the box. All right, so one of the other customer experience things is, one, they stopped having the LED show through the back. I really appreciate that. But again, it's a little bit understated, but the fact you're carrying around a space gray metal laptop, you're pretty much saying, hi, I'm a Mac. So one of the other things that we did talk about with the Remarkable was this screen protector. So it's basically it feels like rice paper. I mean, it's really, really thin, but what I think it's for mainly is to protect the screen from off-gassing, because as these plastic buttons off-gas, it can sort of leave residue on the screen. And so really simple solution, but perfectly engineered, right? That piece of paper, that piece of rice paper, has a notch in it that fits perfectly on the 16-inch. Not only that, but when it's wrapped up, this piece of paper is pretty much cut to the same exact size as the body. So getting that positioned just right is not an easy feat. Trust me, I've repackaged this like 3 or 4 times, and doing it by hand kind of sucks. So one of the other things that's interesting to me that I've become so accustomed to that it freaks me out when other laptops don't do it is the instant on. And so basically when you open up your MacBook, any of the MacBooks, the display is on and ready to let you in. I'm working with a client right now, and the laptop I was given, basically, or the PC I was given, I open it and I literally have to push a button and to get it to wake up. And then once it's woken up, I have to hit like the space bar or something else to get a login screen to show up, and then I sign in. This, I'm here, right? So people have talked about sort of the keys, the keyboard, butterfly versus switch versus sort of this hybrid concept where it's like a quiet switch, you know, like, oh, and I will say that that's another thing, like Apple was saying, you know, use Touch ID or enter your password. And because I started typing, it brought up the password. I automatically thought that I was filling out my password, which I wasn't. So don't worry. But as I say, I did go ahead and walk through the setup experience. So the setup experience took us about, I want to say 5 or 6 minutes to get to the point where we actually were at a desktop. So when we were actually at the desktop, it kind of looked more like this, only the menu bar and the dock were both visible, right? And the dock had a bunch of crap in it. And as soon as we got here, because I used my Apple ID to sign in, it's already starting to work in the background to start adding all of the accounts and everything like that and sync me up with iCloud. So while it was doing that, I did what I normally do, which is to get really, really frustrated at the tracking speed. So the trackpad typically, near as I can tell, starts at about the 4 notch. And another Google account added. We'll deal with that later. So basically, if you notice like how much I'm moving around to, you know, get the cursor to go, let's see if we can, across the screen. I don't know if you can see that. Let's change the background real quick. So, cursor size, inaccessibility. So let's go there. Now you can see it. Okay, so starting at the far left of the screen, takes me about 4 shots to get all the way across, which is ridiculous from my perspective. And definitely, again, in my perspective, makes me understand why people wanted to have a trackpad that's basically half the width of the laptop. Because if I do this, you know, start over here and actually lift my hand and do that, I can make it all the way or almost all the way across the entire screen in one move. But I'm moving my entire body. I'm lazy. So, or I just think that it's really weird that I would have to move my entire body to make it that far. So I just ramp up the tracking speed. So basically, I can kind of, you know, sit here just in dead center space and go whoop, whoop. So 2, I prefer 1, and if I actually go fast enough, I can make it all the way across. So stop resting my wrist for a second and really kind of show you like, wow, wow, right? Like without traveling that far, I can go all the way across the screen. And it's, sorry, I keep going off the screen with my finger, but basically you can see I'm not using a lot of that trackpad, and it's all just because of the tracking speed. And I mean, you can make it ridiculously fast, right? Where I really don't need to move. And it does get accelerated, so the faster you move, the farther it goes. But yeah, oh my gosh, killing me, Smalls. Most everything else I pretty much leave alone, I think. So let's go back to accessibility. Turn this pointer down. One of the other things that I do is I change the display so that it goes to scaled and I have more space, so I actually get more real estate to mess with. It does make the type smaller, so be aware of that. I'm trying to think. That's pretty much the big stuff. One of the other things that we did is inside of the dock is basically we have mail, messages. So this is like the communication section of the dock. And then we have this sort of productivity with the calendar and the reminders. I might put notes in there, and then I've got the browser, right? And it hides, it magnifies. So, because when I'm looking at my screen, my desktop, I just want to be looking at my screen. I also rearrange the apps. These are just the default apps. So all the apps that are on this desktop, or this screen, if you will, are basically apps I don't use that often. And the apps over here are apps that I tend to use more often. With that said, I have a tendency not to use App Launcher. I just go into Spotlight, search, and I can do Pages, and Pages comes up, right? So yeah, and then I also hide the menu. Again, not sure what we can see and what we can't. So I can also hide the menu, or I also hide the menu. So yeah, I mean, for me, this is just optimal. And I will say that it can get, oh, not Mojave, no, Catalina, there we go. So, this will be the cleanest the desktop ever is. But again, with regard to the keyboard, if we go into notes, so if you can hear, the return key is usually louder, but basically, or one of the louder keys, like the wider keys, tend to be the louder keys. And so if I'm in here and I say the quick brown fox jumped over the 7 lazy dogs, as you can see, I actually have that, and it didn't, there wasn't a lot of sound being generated. And I actually attribute that partially to the butterfly keyboard, because I'm so used to not having to throw as far, that this sort of combination weird midpoint, the magic keyboard, if you will, definitely is okay. So now, just kind of thinking about in terms of the arrow keys, I can definitely sense or get a feel for when I'm going up or down from these a lot better than I could with the old MacBook Pro. So let's go ahead and close out notes. So at this point, once we got in, I didn't manage to get all of this set up before the updates happened, because that's sort of the next step in the process. Is Mac OS just starts doing all of these things to get you up to date, and the update for Catalina kicked in before I actually had everything set up, and I was still running a timer for that, and that timer, let's see if it's still in my phone. So yeah, that timer, and we'll show the video here in a second, but basically, it took 25 minutes from the moment that we kind of got in, and it said, I'm going to restart your computer to do this update. That's how long it took. So 25 minutes, which is not bad. So there you go. Let's roll the other clip. All right, looks like we're done. Password needed, magic of television. Don't show recent applications in the dock. That's the other one. So there we go. Nice. There it is. just my 5 little apps. There was a period where I actually went and didn't have any of them. But yeah, so basically in 20-25 minutes, that includes an update, a software update. We're pretty much up and running. I do also recommend and want to double check myself that I'm working with the machine that I think I should be. So basically, we've got Catalina with 2.15.2. It is the 16-inch. The processor is the i7 2.6 gigahertz. The memory is up to 32, which is good. The graphics are. Uh-oh. This is saying that it's using the Intel UHD graphics. So let's go ahead and launch Safari. Go to Apple. Oh, one of the other things that I always do is under displays. I want to do scaled instead of default for display, and I like to have more space. So it does make the text smaller, but I like being able to have more stuff on here. So 16-inch. Am I missing something? Like, Intel graphics should not be an option for this laptop. It's all AMD. Oh, 5500M, 8 gigs of virtual RAM. Yeah, I'm probably going to talk to Apple to see what the story is of why the graphics is being listed as Intel UHD, just to make sure. But yeah, no, it seems like we have the correct laptop. As I was saying, the keyboard feels pretty okay. It definitely seems quiet. I'm not sure I'm faster with it. I mean, it'll definitely be something that I have to play with, but yeah, there we go. Laptop is set up, and I'm gonna go do the rest of this. All right, so there we have it. MacBook Pro 16-inch customer experience, just always a pleasure. With regard to most of the Apple products, at least most of the devices, right? But even, I remember one of my favorites was an HDMI cable adapter that I had that, I opened it, like one, I had a pull strip, I could open the top lid, and then this little tab came out, and I pulled the tab, and there's just this adapter floating in the middle of a piece of cardstock, and I could just peel it off. No zip strips to take off, no scissors to get out, nothing. Just there it was. And so, yeah, always a pleasure. With that said, I do apologize for snafus and things like that, but I'm not so much impressed. I'm more impressed that I'm going back to owning the laptop, well, eightfold. Let's be legally correct here. I'm really, as the business owner, I'm looking forward to eightfold owning its equipment again, as opposed to leasing it. And there's pluses and minuses to everything, and I think we're making the right choice. So with that said, as always, thank you so much for making the time. I definitely do appreciate it, and I'll see you around.